As you know, it's been a challenging few weeks here at the UFC. While our popularity worldwide continues to grow, we have recently seen issues with several of our high-profile athletes failing drug tests. We're extremely disappointed in these failed drug tests, but truthfully, they are a result of our commitment to enhance drug testing. We said that we were going to catch athletes using PEDs through these testing procedures, and we are doing just that. These findings have caused us to take a deeper look at our current policies, our administration and communication process, as well as how we can continue to better educate and lead our athletes in the areas of health and wellness. We've always deemed it our responsibility to take the leadership position on key areas impacting our sport, and fighter health and safety has always been at the top of our list. When we purchased this company in 2001, only one state regulated the sport of mixed martial arts. Today, the sport is regulated throughout the U.S. and by international regulatory bodies around the world. This is a direct result of our efforts. We spent countless hours going from state capitol building to state capitol building, international city to international city, pushing for the sport to be properly regulated. By doing so, we have built the foundation for the regulation of mixed martial arts. We recognize the need for a more robust out-of-competition plan in accordance with athletic commissions and regulatory bodies. Simply put, we can do better. We've all seen similar challenges in the world of sports, and consequently, we see that the UFC is no more immune to performance-enhancing drug use than any other major sport. We can take the learning from actions taken and continue to work diligently to protect the health and safety of UFC athletes and the integrity of the sport. Today marks the continuation of our call to action to combat the use of PEDs. It is our belief that this plan will drive us in making our sport safer and allowing all of our athletes to compete on an even playing field. By doing so, we will not only be a leader in mixed martial arts, but also in the world of professional sports.
So most of the media understands how this works, but there's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about the last few positive tests that have happened here in the UFC. So I want to clarify a few things. I'll start with John Jones. John Jones was tested out of competition on December 4th. When he was tested, he tested positive for cocaine. He was then again tested on December 18th. He was negative for PEDs. He was not tested again for cocaine. For people who don't understand the way that WADA works, the WADA rules and regulations, you do not test for recreational drugs out of competition, okay? Out of competition, you do not test for recreational drugs. So then he was tested again on January 3rd, post-fight. After the fight, he was tested, and he tested negative for everything. Performance-enhancing drugs or recreational drugs, okay? So the difference between out-of-competition testing for PEDs. So I saw a lot of people talking about John Jones tested positive for cocaine, yet you see other fighters getting in big trouble for testing positive for marijuana. That is the difference between out of competition and in competition. John Jones tested positive for cocaine out of competition. In competition, he's tested negative. So these fighters that you hear about that get in big trouble for marijuana or any other recreational drug, it's during competition. So had John Jones tested positive for a recreational drug after the fight, he would be even in more trouble, okay? He was fined $25,000 for violating the code of conduct, and that money ended up being donated to a charity that benefits children impacted by drug use. All right? And at the end, there will be a Q&A here so we can get more into all this stuff, but I just want to set the record straight on a few things. The next one is Anderson Silva. So Anderson Silva had a pre-fight test, an out-of-competition test, okay? And that test was on January 9th, and it was done by the Sports Medicine and Research Testing Laboratory, which is a world anti-doping agency and accredited lab in Salt Lake City, Utah. That test was taken on January 9th, right? The Nevada State Athletic Commission did not get that test result back until Tuesday, February 23rd, and we found out, February 3rd, I'm sorry, Tuesday, February 3rd. They got the test back Tuesday, February 3rd, which was after the event. We found out at 10 a.m. that morning. The Nevada State Athletic Commission notified us, and we found out that morning. So we're going to hand out this drug test to the media here. We actually have the test. I want everybody to see it. Some of you I know already know the answers to this and already get it, but I gotta walk through this for the people that do not. Fans too. There's fans and everybody. And let me start by saying this. Believe me, if you don't think when this pre-fight test came into us on Tuesday, we didn't say, how is this just coming in now? This doesn't make sense. So if you look at the test, right, it's up on the screens too. Right up in the right-hand corner it says collection date. The collection date was 1/9/2015. The lab receipt date, the day they received it, was 1/12/2015, and the report date was 2/3/2015. All right? That test did not come back until after the fight, and that's when we were notified. First of all, the Nevada Athletic Commission would never let a fighter go in if they knew he was on performance-enhancing drugs, and we would never do that. No fight or no one fighter is worth the integrity of this sport. It would never happen. This test came back after the fact. There's some issues there. I get it, and you know, these are all things that are being worked on now. But I just want everybody to know we would never do that. The Nevada State Athletic Commission would never do that. And the test is right here. And for those of you that didn't see it, Kevin Ioli actually called this lab and did an interview with the doctor who does this testing, and he explained to him and broke it down what happened and why that test was late. Also, Anderson Silva tested positive in his post-fight PED drug test. He will now go before the Nevada State Athletic Commission to plead his case. Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard failed his post-fight test on January 3rd. The results came back on January 13th. So as soon as we heard that he tested positive, we yanked him off the card. He was supposed to fight in Montreal in the co-main event against Rory McDonald. So as soon as we heard he was out of the fight, and so people started saying to us, well, why didn't you release it? Why didn't you announce that Hector Lombard tested positive? We never announce when a guy tests positive unless we're self-regulating. If we self-regulate an event and we get the test back and somebody is positive, we let the media know, we let the fighter know, and then we lay down our sentence. But there's never a situation where we announce a drug test that was done by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. They do it. So we responded quickly, we yanked him out of the fight, and now Rory McDonald will fight Robbie Lawler for the UFC Welterweight Championship on July 11th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas.
This is the testing call to action from the UFC. The UFC will immediately advocate to all commissions to test every fighter in competition from every card. We want 100% of the fighters tested the night that they compete in competition. And if there's additional costs associated with that that's outside of any state or federation's budget, we will pay for any additional costs required. That means that in a calendar year, based on 41 events, that we will administer approximately 984 tests annually. Of course, if there's more events or more than 12 fights per card, that number will adjust accordingly. In addition to that, the UFC, in conjunction with local athletic commissions, will subject all main event and championship bout fighters to enhanced out-of-competition PED testing effective July 1, 2015. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that from today up until that point that there will not be out-of-competition testing. There will be. In order for us to put this structure in place, which we'll explain later, it's going to take us some time to work with third-party collection agencies, third-party testing agencies to get contracts done, get procedures done, and we'll address that more later. Given that, we assume that there will be approximately 96 marquee fighters tested on an annual basis. Once again, given the assumption of 41 fight cards, we also assume that of the 13 premier events, or we call them pay-per-view events, that 8 of those will have double championship bouts. That's how we get to that number. The UFC will institute comprehensive out-of-competition random PED testing for all UFC fighters will be subject to this effective July 1, 2015. That means that approximately 585 of the fighters on the roster, which fluctuates on a week-to-week basis, but approximately at any given time we have 585 fighters, they will be subject to testing by an independent third party using WADA testing standards. We are currently and have been and currently engaged in talks with numerous reputable global drug testing organizations to create this random drug testing protocol. Once again, our goal, and we are confident that we can have it in place by July 1, 2015. What does this mean from a fiscal standpoint? The years 2013 and 2014, the UFC spent approximately $500,000 in testing expenses. Given that the number of tests will increase at a minimum tenfold, potentially significantly more, we understand and we are willing to commit several $1 million for both in and out of competition and random PED drug testing. In addition to that, and maybe most importantly in ridding our sport of PED usage, we are advocating for longer suspensions and harsher penalties issued by state athletic commissions, international federations, or whatever body is handing down penalties. Currently, I believe that the WADA standard is, on a first-time offender for PED usage, a 2-year ban. We certainly advocate for that. We understand that WADA is either contemplating or will institute a first-time offender a 4-year ban. We will absolutely support that as well. There has to be harsher penalties to rid the sport of PED usage. We are committed to it in every way that you possibly could be. There should be no mistake there. And I think that this definitely should be a call out to all of our athletes that are on our roster that you will be tested both in competition, you will be tested out of competition, and if you are using performance-enhancing drugs, you will be caught, and there will be significant penalties that will go along with that.
When you mention, getting behind the WADA standard of a 4-year ban, obviously that 4-year ban is with the Olympics in mind. With this particular sport, do you have an idea? I mean, is 4 years your best idea, or is that just something that, because obviously you want to support the WADA code, for your sport, what is appropriate, do you think?
That's a good question. I think that what we do know is that the current system or the current penalties that are being put forth, we don't believe are enough to deter athletes from taking PEDs. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We're seeing this continually. And when you look at the fact that, these fighters fight anywhere from 2 to 3 times per year, if they get a 9-month suspension, in our opinion, they're really only maybe missing 1 fight. We just don't think it's enough to deter them. There needs to be harsher penalties, whether it's 2 years or 4 years. We're going to have to debate that. We're going to have to look at that. But it certainly needs to be more than what it is today.
I agree. And when you look at, the fighters are going to look at the risk versus reward. Okay? If I can make, a few $1 million, I'll take the risk of getting caught and getting a 9-month suspension and whatever it is. 2 or 4 years is career threatening. If you're 28 years old and you get busted for a PED and you're off for 4 years, that might be the end of it. So now you look at the risk versus reward, and it's a lot more dangerous.
Your commentator, Joe Rogan, had said that there's a steroid epidemic, not only in MMA, but in the UFC. When you hear your color commentator making those type of comments, what's your reaction, and do you agree with him?
Well, Joe exaggerates, and he's a little flamboyant sometimes. I don't know. To say that there's an epidemic here, there's definitely a problem. You look at, it's no different than any other sport. When there's money involved, people are going to find a way to beat the system and to get that edge, and I think because of these high-profile tests and the percentage on the out-of-competition test, it leads people to assume that that's the case. Well, I'll tell you what, we're about to find out. And like Lorenzo said, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But
Just one quick follow-up with that. You said to ESPN last year that you felt that the PED problem in the UFC was cleaned up. So with that said, what happened here within the past year?
well, what happened is we spent $500,000 on out-of-competition testing, you know? And I think when a guy like Anderson Silva gets caught, it definitely sends a message, you know? I think that shocked the entire MMA community and sports world. So it definitely, you know, it shocked me. We were pretty blown away by it, and now we're gonna dig in.
Well, we've certainly talked with drug testing organizations that have worked with those other sports leagues, and they've, you know, sort of conveyed to us the experience that those other sports leagues have gone through. They've also shared with us the successes and the failures, and showed us the programs they think have done a better job versus those that have not done as good a job. And that's part of the process that we're going through right now. We are literally looking at all of the drug testing protocols for all the major sports leagues and trying to pick out what we think are essentially the best qualities of those programs to develop ours. Very much like what we did with our code of conduct. Went and looked at all the major sports leagues, saw what they were doing, and we believe we developed sort of a best in class based upon all the examples that were out there. So, you know, we'll continue to talk with the consultants that we're working at who have experience with those organizations with the goal of creating the best protocol of any of the sports organizations globally.
And JT, we're going to move a lot faster than baseball did. They're hitting a ball with a stick. Who cares? You have two human beings who go in and compete in combat sports, and if one is using performance-enhancing drugs, it's incredibly dangerous. You know, I hate it. I hate everything about it, and if you can't compete in this sport with your natural abilities, you don't belong here.